Honourable Member for Saint-Bruno, Saint-Hubert. The Conservatives aren't even hiding the fact that they're going to try to sell federal government assets in the sole goal of reducing the size of the deficit. The Minister of State said yesterday that the Economic Action Plan for Canada that Heritage Canada was not on the list this year. Does this mean that Radio Canada could find itself on the next time on a list in a few months, and that the Minister is not abandoning the idea of selling Radio Canada CBC? The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. Let's be clear once again, Mr. Speaker. We made a promise during the election campaign to maintain or increase the budget to Radio Canada. We've done it every year. But I have the assistance package of the Bloc Québécois here in my hand, and you know this is the Bloc's plan. It's 21 pages long, and there is not a single mention of arts, not a single word about arts and culture, not a single word about Radio Canada. Mr. Speaker, Radio Canada is really important to Quebecers. Why isn't it in their platform? The Honourable Member for Argenteuil-Papineau-Mirabel. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister said that the government has bought assets in General Motors, and he's also announced that he wants to get rid of some government assets immediately, as if the situation were not the same in both instances. It's talking about privatizing or selling via rail. It is doing this out of pure ideology. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
This is what I said yesterday, Mr. Speaker, and that is we identified certain departments for asset review this year, and we'll proceed with that. What is odd is the position taken by the opposition, including the Bloc, where they say to the government, spend more, but be fiscally responsible and don't increase the deficit. Well, part of being fiscally responsible is reviewing assets and making sure that those assets continue to perform in the best interests of the Canadian people.
The Honourable Member for Don Valley East.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Finance Minister. The TD Bank's analysis shows that this government will add $170 billion of debt to ordinary Canadians over the next 5 years. The Finance Minister in his fall economic statement said that over the next 5 years he will be booking $2 billion from asset sales each year. Will the Minister inform Canadians across the country which specific assets and from what departments he intends to sell this year to fill a $2 billion hole in his balance sheet?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
The TD economists have presented one view. It's on the low side. There are other economists that are going to present other views, and we're going to hear lots of views about the economy in an uncertain time. With respect to asset review, it's prudent for any large organization to review its assets from time to time. In fact, that is the position of the Toronto-Dominion Bank economists.
The Honourable Member for Don Valley East.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians have a hard time believing this minister, who a few years back was the architect of deficit in Ontario. He shut 26 hospitals, laid off 8,000 nurses, and cut half of the water inspectors, leading to the Walkerton crisis. These institutions affect Canadian lives and Canadian identity. So will the minister set aside his reform ideology and be honest with Canadians about what he intends to sell?
Honourable Minister of Finance. Order.
This is more hypocrisy on the other side, Mr. Speaker. These are the same Liberals who in the mid-1990s cut transfers to the provinces. They cut funding for schools. They cut funding for hospitals. They cut funding for universities. They cut funding for the elderly. They cut funding for children. These are the hypocritical positions of the Liberal Party of Canada, cutting spending on the weakest in our economy.
Order. The Honourable Member for Honoré-Mercier. Mr. Speaker, The government has put Canada into a disastrous economic situation. Jobs are being lost, the deficit is growing, and the government is improvising on a day-to-day basis. And now it's started a new idea. Some genius somewhere said, well, we're going to have a fire sale and privatize a number of our institutions. This includes Radio-Canada, this includes a National Arts Centre, and they've decided to sell essential assets that are part of our arts and culture. Does the minister understand that culture is not for sale today, yesterday, and it will never be ever for sale?
Ministre.
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Okay, so let me try to understand the Liberal opposition, Mr. Speaker. They voted for the budget, Canada's Economic Action Plan. The asset review is set out in the budget. Now they're saying they don't like an asset review. They're saying they want fiscal responsibility, but they're saying don't review expenditures, don't review assets. They say they want to spend more on EI, but they say don't increase spending. Who in Canada can take any of them seriously?
Honourable Member for Honoré-Mercier. Order. Order. The Honourable Member for Honoré-Mercier.
The problem is that nobody believes them anymore.
Mr. Speaker, there's culture. If they would give it importance, they have to invest the money that it needs. Today, the government is imposing a strategic review, and it will cut some of our most important programs for our artists and creators. The government is attacking at the same time the Arts, National Arts Centre, Telefilm, and Radio-Canada. What does it hate so much about arts and culture? Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage.
All he wants, but the facts and the budgets that we've passed in this House of Commons that member voted for are crystal clear. This Conservative government made promises in election campaigns to maintain or increase support for arts and culture. We've increased funding for the National Arts Centre. We've increased funding for the Canada Council for the Arts, up to a record amount, Mr. Speaker, $181 million. Artists supporting artists for the future to support our creative economy. When the Liberals ran for office and were elected, they promised not to touch arts and culture. They gutted arts and culture. They cut CBC by a third, and now they're pointing fingers to us and saying that we're not doing our job. We kept our word. We've delivered. It's the Liberals who failed, Mr. Speaker.